Recently, there's been a lot of talk on Facebook and in a number of other areas on the internet about spiritual teachers and by spiritual teachers who are saying that they're not really calling themselves teachers anymore. They're not really considering themselves teachers. They continue to conduct satsangs and teachings and retreats and things like that, but somehow there's no teacher there. In the world of non-duality, there is so much that goes on that is just, I think, to me anyway, amazingly strange, and in that it's one of the few philosophical or religious or spiritual pursuits that people follow in which they are continuously, I wouldn't say criticizing it, but continuously trying to eliminate it. They're trying to eliminate the seeker. There's a profound mistrust for the teacher. And I find that very strange, because I think the most important thing about a teacher, if you're looking for a guru or a teacher or any sort of a person, whether that person, whether you regard them as a sage or some sort of a saint, is really neither here nor there. In the fact that a teacher is someone who teaches. If you learn something from someone, then they are a teacher. And it doesn't matter what their profession is, or if they go around and say, I'm a teacher, or I'm not a teacher. The interesting thing I find about these non-dual teachers that are going around now saying that they're no longer calling themselves a non-dual teacher, or they're no longer calling themselves this, and yet they still have no difficulty charging you at the door or asking you for donations or something like that, because they think that there's something that they're doing that is valuable to you and should be valuable to you. So a lot of spiritual teachers are moving into areas of psychology. And philosophy, psychology, particularly in an existential sense, in a sense of the non-duality sense, these things kind of go together. I think before one goes on any kind of a spiritual search, one sort of has to get one's head together, as it were. But really, the head isn't where we're working from. We're working from the heart. And I think that one of the things when it comes to non-duality teaching that is important is that there's an Eastern model, and I'm not sure whether there really is a Western model or not, but there really ought to be. There ought to be one that centers around what I would look at or call a spiritual friend. Because a teacher's in a particular position, a student is in another position, a guru is in a particular position, and a devotee is in a opposite position. We're looking at a kind of a dualistic system there, where you have teacher, student, whereas seeking is something that goes on. I mean, a person can say, I have an answer, I have an understanding, I've had an experience, but experiences come and go. Understandings change and grow over a period of time. And we're looking at a situation where we have basically an ongoing, growing thing. The reality, the sense of love that we are. This is really the only thing that really needs to be mentioned, that really needs to be talked about. Because we are not things. We are a movement. We're a happening. We're an event. And And it can be a great event or it can be a sad event, but it's always changing. This is one of the wonderful things about it, is that it's always changing. And you'll have people say, well, there's a changelessness, there's a nothingness, there's a silence. But the silence that we feel is just pregnant with emotion and growth and spontaneity and I mean, even in the heart of the greatest pain that we feel, we can still see a grain of wheat blow in the wind, the sunrise in the morning. It may be hidden, it may be shrouded, but it's there and it's happening, and it's the thing that keeps us solid, keeps us strong, keeps us alive. And that's life itself. Life itself. I mean, we can get lost in this idea of seeking. We can get lost in this idea of teaching. But living the life, this is what teaching is all about, is if I'm seeking someone who's living the life. I'm seeking someone who is engaged, not all the time sitting around talking about how I'm nobody. I'm going into stillness now. Stillness happens. But if there's someone going into stillness, or if there's someone there's experiencing stillness, then this isn't really the stillness that you seek. The stillness as you seek is something that is so natural and happens so spontaneously, that there is no real awareness of it, because there is nothing but awareness of it. We talk a lot about words and how we shouldn't use words and how the mind gets in the way, and the mind, and we make enemies of these things. We make enemies of words, we make enemies of the mind. And all of these things are things that are dancing in the reality. They're all part of the reality. Living the life is what it's all about. Living the life. And, you know, what does that mean? It means loving. It means constantly, ongoingly loving. And not a you loving. You know, it's not me loving, it's loving. Loving is going on. That is what's creating all that we see. You, me, we're all part of that loving. And it's all that that's moving all around us, all the time. And we can say that it's nothing. And we can say that there's nothing to be named, and there's no me, there's no you. And yet these things dance. And in that dance is the life. In that dance is the one. The more that join in that dance, the more that we are part of the waving of the trees and the wind. I mention that because we're having quite a big, I think, 30 mile an hour winds today. But this movement, this constant change. And that's the thing, people want to say that the reality never changes, and yet it never changes in that it never stops changing. That's the reality of it. That's the life. And that's what I'm talking about here, living the life. I started out talking about teachers and gurus, and I'm into this idea of living the life, because that's what you look for in a teacher. Are they living the life? Are they just going through the motions and talking about non-duality? Or are they living a non-dual life? And what the devil does that mean, live a non-dual life? And I think a lot of it has to do with just moving along with life. not making big plans for the future, but I think living as if there is one. I think this idea of living as if is a great idea when it comes to any idea of a practice, you know. Live as if you already are perfect, because you are. Live as if you are already totally with understanding, because you are. It's just really you that stands in between it. Anyway, this is a long video and it's getting out of hand. I haven't made one for a while, and I wanted to say something about this, because if you're a teacher, you shouldn't go around and say you're not a teacher. If you have an understanding to share, you need to let other people know that you have an understanding to share. And if they learn from it, then you're a teacher, because there's teaching going on. And that's the thing that needs to go on, is there needs to be learning and there needs to be teaching. And these things can go back and forth. I certainly wouldn't want to go to a teacher that couldn't learn from his students. When I was very young and I first wanted to be a junior high school teacher, I never did that. I never did that, because I got into a lot of variety of spiritual practices and things that didn't happen. But my idea for teaching was because I wanted to keep learning, and I knew that I could learn as much from my students as I can learn from books. And you do that. I mean, if a teacher isn't learning all the time, if he isn't growing all the time, if he isn't, having new experiences, having new understandings, having new ways to use the words to describe the indescribable, then he's not much of a teacher. In any event, so long for now.